Hello guys, you may notice that there is a marked difference in the video quality for this vlog. I look back on my TF Nation vlog I did a month back, and that was filmed on my other camera, and it's just really not great quality. I was not happy with that, so I've decided that I'm retiring that camera and I'm going to try and do as many vlogs as I can using my phone, which is much prettier. I figured today I would talk about Scotland Comic Con, because I went to that. That was the 8th to the 9th of October. I figured it was about time that I talked about the experience, because I went there for a very specific reason, in case you hadn't guessed from the thumbnail. So I'd seen posts about the convention probably about a month or two before it happened. I knew that one of my acquaintances from TF Nation was going to be in attendance. I knew that Peter Cullen and Frank Welker were going to be there. And initially I kind of decided, I thought about, well, actually maybe I could do like a trip up to Edinburgh. But initially I kind of come to the conclusion that actually no, I can't afford it. Logistically it's not feasible at this point. Maybe I'll have another chance in the future. Maybe there'll be another opportunity like that. I don't know. They've done I think they've both done Liverpool Comic Con in 2020, just before the pandemic, or like late 2019. So I figured that there was a chance that they might come back to the UK at some point. So I was kind of content to just kind of leave it for this year and hope that another opportunity might present itself. But it was around about October 4th that I saw my friend Shadow post again about Scotland Comic Con, and they were talking about, like, they bought a last minute ticket for the meet and greet, which was it was another thing you could do alongside getting like an autograph and a photograph. And in that tweet they spoke about it being like, this could be my only chance to actually see them in person, and I want to make the best of it. I want to make the most of this moment, regardless of finances. And that got me rethinking about Comic-Con, because I realized that how many more opportunities am I potentially going to get to meet these people? Nobody's getting any younger, says it all. And I may never get this opportunity again, so why not just grab the bull by the horns and go for it. So I'm talking 4 days before the convention is actually meant to open, I have a chat with my parents about the logistics of travelling to Edinburgh, finding a place to stay for the convention, in a very quick turnaround time. It was a very exciting process, because I've never been to Scotland ever. I've never even been with like family. The furthest north I think I've been is like Manchester, maybe a little further. So the idea of a very kind of last minute slapdash weekend away was very exciting. Also quite surprising, considering that I don't do particularly well with last minute changes, and kind of winging it with like plans and stuff. I rely on having like a structure for the day and having like beats to hit. So yeah, 4-day turnaround to send me up to Scotland was a big deal. It was an adventure. It felt like an adventure, and I was very excited to just just do it, just go out there and wing it on my own, and see how I got on. So my plan was to book the convention for Sunday. I get an autograph and a photograph session with Peter Cullen, and then the Saturday, the day before, I would just spend some time exploring Edinburgh, take it all in, just kind of enjoying the city. Peter Cullen was the main guest that I wanted to see. Frank Welker I added on later, after I'd sorted out accommodation and travel. I just figured that I'm coming all this way to see Optimus Prime, and Megatron is there as well. Make the most of the opportunity. It's the exact same argument. Make the most of the time that I've got there and the opportunity that I have. So I ended up booking a photograph and autograph session with Frank Welker as well. So I managed to sort out work cover, got accommodation in the heart of Edinburgh, like right next to the train station. I had to book 2 nights, so I could only stay the one, but it was £29 per night, and considering how much I'd already spent on the convention itself, that was a big deal. So I was very happy to find somewhere like that. It was like a hostel for like backpackers and like interrailing groups. But you know what? happy with that as long as I've got somewhere to stay just for one night, and it's relatively cheap. All good, all fine by me. Travel though turned out to be the biggest nightmare. We had the train strikes over the weekend, incidentally support workers, unions and rail strikes. Planes are either going to be like a 90-minute flight but incredibly expensive, or they were cheap but it would involve like spending almost an entire day in like Dublin. Eventually we managed to find some relatively cheap overnight coaches which would take me from London Victoria to Edinburgh, and then there'd be like a return one on the Sunday evening. Unfortunately, in our rush to book those coaches, I ended up booking an outbound coach from London Victoria to Edinburgh for Wednesday, not for Friday. So that was a very alarming thing to realise on Thursday, the day before I'm meant to depart. I had a really big like panic moment. It's like, oh my god, like it's been so hard to get to this point, and we've overlooked this thing. It's completely scuppered the plans. Oh no, oh no. But thankfully we managed to find another coach, another overnight one, which would go from Birmingham to Glasgow and then on to Edinburgh on the Friday evening and Saturday morning. So on Friday we set off to Birmingham in the evening to catch my coach at just before midnight. It was the first time that I'd ever done kind of like an overnight travel, like an overnight coach or anything like that. So I was very intrigued to see how I would do in terms of getting any sleep on one of those. Spoilers, I didn't. I got barely an hour's sleep. Turns out that despite all the sleeping aids that I brought with me, I had like my headphones playing white noise, I had like my neck pillow, I had the sleeping mask on, doing all that. Despite all that, not a wink. It was not comfortable. Got into Glasgow at around about 6 a.m. There was about a kind of 3-hour wait before the next coach would take me on to Edinburgh.
You look pretty cringe to me.
Jumped on the coach to get me to Edinburgh. That was only about an hour. I got to see a lot of like Scottish countryside for the first time. Absolutely gorgeous. And then we arrived in Edinburgh as I left the bus station. Got into the centre of the city and I was greeted with this. Edinburgh is probably the most beautiful city that I've ever been to. You know, it's got absolutely just gorgeous architecture, lots of green spaces within the city as well, and it's, you know, it's surrounded by like the Scottish Highlands as well. Like it's more obvious when you get to like, you know, some of the higher places like the castle, but you can just see like, you know, beautiful like massive mountains and hills all around the city. Genuinely had moments during my first like the first few hours I was there, just kind of like staring at things and just like wow, just having like that an actual genuine reaction to it. I managed to get checked into the hostel around about 2 or 3 p.m. So dropped off my bags, and then just took a little bit of time to explore the city. I wish I'd had more time to kind of take it all in. There was so much of Edinburgh that I really wanted to see, and I just didn't have the time to catch it. But I did get up to Edinburgh Castle. You know, I could see, and that's where I saw like these beautiful panoramics of the city and the mountains surrounding it. I took in a lot of like the high street, and it was just like tartan shop after tartan shop after cashmere shop after cashmere shop after tartan shop. It was just all of that just lining the streets either side all the way up to the castle. I really want to go back someday and, you know, take in as much of Edinburgh as I can, and like everything that I missed. It's just so much of the city that I didn't get to see that I really wanted to. Wrapped up the Saturday with some fresh Scottish drip. Grabbed dinner and sorted out my route to the Highland Centre, like with all the buses and stuff, knowing where I needed to go. Woke up the next morning, grabbed breakfast, packed up my stuff for the day, and set off for the convention. The journey was only about 30 minutes, and then there was about a kind of like 10-minute walk from the closest bus stop to take me to the centre itself. The closer I got, the more excited and more nervous I felt, and like, you know, it started to feel more and more real. We had worked so hard to make this trip a reality in such a short space of time, and I'd spent a good portion of it thinking that it wasn't going to happen, and that, you know, I'd wasted my money, and I wasn't going to be able to make it. But, you know, I was walking across like the fields and stuff like that, across like the kind of car parking areas, And yeah, it's just like, this is, you know, I'm getting closer. This is actually going to happen. It's becoming more and more kind of like tangible now.
They do move in herds.
So I headed through the ticket barriers, went into the lobby area of the kind of main hall, grabbed myself a program, and then I stepped through the doors into the main convention hall.
Right. Comic-Con Scotland, let's sit. Oh.
I haven't done that many conventions in my time. I've done every TF Nation, I've done 2 or 3 auto assemblies, and then I did it was Games Day, like the Warhammer Games Workshop convention way back in like 2009. In terms of scale, Comic-Con dwarfed TF Nation. And it certainly gave Games Day a run for its money as well. It was huge. The convention was spread across 3 halls.
Okay.
There was kind of the main hall that you walked into first, which was where all of the guests were located. You have the trader kind of stands as well. There was like a little guest like stage as well in the corner. Moving through to the second hall, it was kind of like mostly kind of seating areas. There were the photo booths there for the guests. There was like a wrestling ring as well, which was very funny.
Sir, did you pay for your ticket? Sir?
The third hall was a bit more open. It had like the kind of largest guest stage, which is where I spotted Ewan McGregor.
That's fucking Obi-Wan Kenobi.
And I think it had like replica props and things like that, and a couple of like kind of photo stands where you could you had like some Star Wars photo stands of Stranger Things, and one was there as well. I only went in there once though, just to kind of like see everything that I couldn't explore. So generally I just stuck to the first hall, which is where I had agreed to meet up with Shadow and a couple other people. They very conveniently situated themselves right next to Peter Cullen and Frank Welker's stands, and we kind of dubbed our little area like the TF Nation corner. I got my first glimpse of Frank and Peter as I was walking up towards that little spot, which was very, very bizarre. I think it's true for most of us that we've only really seen them in like photographs and videos on the internet, so to actually kind of like, you know, see that they are, you know, they are physical, they are real people, was very, very strange to me. So I met up with Shadow and Seren and their little group just after 11. Shadow had already done their autograph with Peter, I think the other day, but they suggested that, you know, for some reason there was no queue, but they suggested that while there was basically no queue there, I get in line to meet Peter Cullen and get stuff signed. I thought it was very strange that there was not really much of a queue, at least not a kind of like consistent queue for Frank and Peter. But then that kind of puts into perspective that like this isn't a Transformers convention. This is like, you know, this is Comic-Con. This is lots of different fandoms, and like they've got Ewan flipping McGregor to compete with as well. So, you know, it's not just Transformers fans. There's a lot of other fandoms that are represented there. So I got in line, and after a few minutes, the guy in front of me moved out of the way, and I stepped forward.
It's like he can teleport.
It was very obvious speaking to Peter, like, how much these interactions mean to him. He was incredibly sincere and thankful and attentive to what I was saying. You can see in the video that Shadow took for me that you know, he's always maintaining eye contact, he's always listening, and it really meant a lot to have that connection, to make that connection with him. I don't think that he or Frank take what they have for granted at all. I think they are fully aware of the position that they are in, and it's, you know, it's not lost on them what this means to people, and it means just as much to them. I've been really worrying about what I was going to say to them, because like moments like these, you want to, like, you feel like you need to make a really good impression, and like you don't, you know, you want to say something that's really going to mean something to them, and you're also very aware of how little time you have to speak. So when I got up to him, I told him like my truth. I can't remember exactly what I said, but I remember telling him that it was a great privilege to meet him. I got into Transformers just before the first movie came out, and that, you know, it meant a lot to be able to actually meet him in person and thank him for that. And yeah, to thank him for all his work as Optimus Prime. I got 2 things signed by Peter Cullen when I was at his stand. First off, I did the postcard there, the Crosshairs Productions postcard. I'd already got a couple of signatures at TF Nation, but he signed just there, of course, right underneath Optimus. And the other thing I got him to sign was this thing. This is the 10th anniversary 2007 movie leader Optimus Prime. I bought this initially for TF Nation 2020 until the whole pandemic thing happened. This literally took up half the space in my suitcase. I brought a big bag as well to carry it during the convention, and I got very worried because that bag started ripping over the course of the day, so I was very careful with that. But he signed it to Joe, roll out, Peter Cullen. I'm very glad that I kept this sealed in the chance that I would, you know, have this opportunity to meet him. So I thanked him, wished him well, and told him that we'd be doing a photo later, and rejoined our little TF Nation corner. I spent a bit of time after that just kind of wandering around the con hall, taking stuff in, did a few purchases before I went off to do the photo with Peter Cullen. Against my better judgment, I brought my first edition Prime Optimus to have in the picture. I don't think I've ever transformed something with quite so much urgency as I did with that while I was waiting in the queue. I think it took me just less than 2 minutes to get him from vehicle to robot mode. Went on into the booth, and I think I said to him something like, I brought something that you might recognise. And he said, let me hold that. And this was the picture that we took. I don't know what I was thinking of in terms of what my pose was going to be, but it's very funny. I'm very pleased that I decided to bring the figure along, because that was definitely worth it. So I went over to Frank's table a little later. By this point there was a much bigger queue, but it did mean that I had an opportunity to chat with other people who were waiting in line, show off what I got signed by Peter. That was really nice. Frank was really lovely and genuine as well. It just so happened that we had matching tartan scarves actually, which was a very good icebreaker, because again, I wasn't sure what I was going to say to him, but I think we had I think they were identical. I think they were both Clan Blackwatch, I think it is, which for me, there is some family in that. I don't know if it's the same case for Frank, but I think, you know, he might have just liked the pattern on it. Unfortunately, they didn't have any prints for Prime Megatron, which is my favourite one of Frank's Megatrons. But again, I got him to sign just there. He's under Treadshot, Frank Welker, signed the postcard there, and I picked up this really lovely print. I think this is from the Smite video game, which I don't think that he actually voices Megatron in, but it looked really nice. And he signed that. I was warned that he did really big signatures, so I'm quite glad that it was a small one for the Crosshairs postcard. But this is very lovely. If I give myself more time, then I would have brought something specific for Frank to sign, but I booked his autograph literally the day before I went up to Scotland. And of course as well, we did a picture. Just nothing silly with this one, just 2 blokes repping Clan Blackwatch. So after that, I spent some more time hanging out with the TF Nation corner, did a few more passes around the trader hall. It was really nice having a place to come back to between our little kind of ventures out and the meets and greets, just to come back and chill and chat and kind of appreciate the things that we'd all picked up and all that. We met a guy called Lee, who was also a massive TF fan. Was blown away that he'd never heard of TF Nation, but you know, we chatted with him for just ages and ages about stuff, and it really felt like TF Nation in terms of like the the vibes and the energy there, and it was really cool to make a new friend. And I think we managed to convince him to come to TF Nation actually. So Lee, if you're watching this, I hope to see you there. We did actually have a few more interactions with both Frank and Peter. We heckled them as they were heading off for their meet and greets.
Oh, hello, Megatron!
And then as the con was wrapping up, we ended up hanging out on the kind of like the barricades next to Peter's table. Had another chance to speak with him, which was really cool. I got another selfie. That was awesome. He has a lot of time for people. He's very generous with his time, and it meant a lot to have another little interaction with him just as everything was kind of wrapping up, and even just to be in his presence. So then the con was wrapping up. It was about 5 o'clock. Peter and Frank headed off. We said our goodbyes to them and to each other. One last group photo, and then we head out into the pouring rain. I had to be very careful that the Optimus Prime box did not get rained on, because my god, that bag was almost split in half by this point. Fortunately, no rain damage on that. It's all good. It's all safe. My coach out of Edinburgh was about 9:30 that very same evening, so packing was my priority as soon as I got back to the hotel. Dropped off my keys, thanked the hotel staff, grabbed a little something to eat, and then hopped on the coach to London Victoria. I was genuinely very sad to depart. Like I said, Edinburgh was stunning, and I really want to go back. I really want to go back. It's just so beautiful. As you might imagine, I had just as much success sleeping on the coach back to England as I did on the way to Scotland. But despite that, and also the zip on my backpack breaking as soon as I arrived in London, managed to drag myself onto the right tubes to get me home and relax at last after just such an amazing weekend. Before I carry on though, I think I might as well go over what I bought. I didn't go too crazy because, like I said, this thing took up half of my luggage. So I was not going to be able to walk away with anything particularly big for this visit, but I did find myself a couple of nice little things. So one of the first things that I picked up at the convention was this Studio Series Dark of the Moon Bumblebee. This is probably my favourite version of the Studio Series B that they have revealed. I got very excited when he was first announced. I think they just got the colours on him just absolutely spot on. Yeah, very pleased with this little guy here. I very rarely double dip on Transformers figures, but this is one where I make an exception. This is my second buzzworthy Silver Streak. I'm intending to get the Toy Hacks kit, which will turn this into Season 3 Prime smokescreen, when he's got the yellow decals on the hood and on the sides there. It's just so lovely. Anyone who owns this just knows how lovely it is, and I think this is the best version of the Earthrise Datsuns that we've got. I have never owned anything from the Beast Machines line, which makes Mirage my first. Picked this up on one of the stalls, it had a kind of assortment of loose figures, including a fair few Transformers. But spotting Mirage, I think I kind of recognise that. Oh, I know who that is. He gives me such like gremlin energy. It reminds me of like a Matoran from Bionicle or something. He's got that kind of stature. He's quite fun. I enjoyed playing with him. A lot of translucent plastic, which I hope is going to last. It was a nice little surprise find. I always like that when especially at TF Nation, when I see something that grabs my attention. It's like, oh, I've never seen that before, and then you just grab it. You might notice that there is a trend of yellow and blue going on at the moment, and that doesn't end here. I picked up Titan's Return Terrible for a tenner, I think it was. I mean, to be honest, I'm not a fan of Titan Masters, but I am a sucker for rarities. Titan Masters, Headmasters are good for digital recolors and stuff like that, when you want to have crowd fillers. So grab this little guy. Kind of nice, kind of fun. It was mostly just for the rarity factor rather than me actually being interested in, the toy and the character. So yeah, that was kind of cool. Grabbed myself a little Matt Smith 11th Doctor action figure. I'm surprised I haven't already got one of these, because 11 is my favourite Doctor. He's one of the few ones which has got outward arm articulation, even though it leaves him with a very, very thin bicep. And then I think this was the last thing I picked up before the convention closed properly. There was a stall which was selling replica scripts for various films and TV shows, and I picked up a copy of the Into the Spider-Verse script. I was debating between this and the Iron Man script, but I went with this because Into the Spider-Verse, it's one of my favourite Spider-Man films, and I figured it would be really good to give this a read, maybe read it along to the film itself, and just get a better understanding of how a script is constructed in a professional way. I don't know who signed this. I recognise Nicolas Cage there. I don't know who the other ones are meant to be, and they are definitely not original signatures, because they had tons of these stacked up. But no, it was a cool little thing to grab. I think it was only about 15 quid. So yeah, looking forward to finding some time to going through this. Before I wrap this up, I have a lot of people to thank for this whole adventure. First off, a massive thank you to my mum and dad for helping me organise this trip last minute, and for being so supportive with with getting it off the ground and making sure that I could get to Edinburgh and back safe and sound and not be trapped anywhere. Shadow, Seren, Lee, everyone else who was part of our little posse at the tables. I'm so glad that I asked if I could hang out with you guys for the day. It would not have been half as fun without you. Like, who wants to do a convention solo? I can't imagine, like, it wouldn't have been anywhere near as memorable if I had just been wandering around these massive halls by myself. I wouldn't have found, probably wouldn't have found anyone to actually kind of talk to. But thank you for letting me hang out with you. It was an amazing experience and such a pleasure. And yeah, I'll hopefully see you guys at least one of the other TF Nations that's happening in 2023. Am I going to do another Comic-Con? I don't know, unless I give myself a lot more time to prepare. It ended up being a very expensive adventure, and especially with the revelation that it was actually £50 per autographed item. I don't know if future Comic-Cons will offer enough to interest me, but I would say that this one was a worthwhile experience to see what something like MCM might be like. It was quite refreshing as well from the kind of the onslaught of robots that TF Nation has. It also made like the purchases that I got a lot more meaningful because they were a little harder to find in amongst all like the kind of, the Batman and the Star Wars action figures. So when I saw a Transformer, it's like, ah, cool, Beast Machine's Mirage. But I mean, overall, like, I'm just happy that I got to finally meet two titans of the franchise, which was definitely worth all of the stress and hassle that I went through. Absolutely worth getting to meet those two wonderful people. I hope that maybe some of you might also have that opportunity. Let me know what you thought, if you enjoyed this video, if you've had any interactions with, not necessarily like Peter Cullen, Frank Welker, but any other like Transformers alumni or any other like famous voice actors. Let me know about it. I love to kind of read your stories and your interactions. I really hope that this hasn't got anywhere near like the 40-50 minutes that the TF Nation vlog was. Thanks again, everyone who has watched the first episode of Ascension Season 3. Next episode is coming in November, so keep an eye out for that. But yeah, have a lovely day, and I will catch you guys very soon. Bye bye.
They put R2-D2 from 4.